أعزائي طلبة المرحلة الثانية، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اليوم محاضرتنا عن ال Anatomy of the Pharynx، يعني تشريح البلعوم. First, the pharynx, it is a funnel-shaped muscular tube. Funnel-shaped muscular tube يعني أنبوب عضلي قمعي الشكل. So, because it is a funnel shape, it is situated behind the nasal cavity, mouth and larynx. يعني راح يكون موقعه behind nasal cavity, mouth and larynx. The upper wide end, because it is a funnel shape يعني إنه شكله يعني مثل القمع يعني it have an upper wide end. This upper wide end lying under the base of the skull here, and it have a narrow lower end. It's continuous with the esophagus. راح تكون مستمرة مع المريء. It's continuous with the esophagus opposite the sixth cervical vertebra يعني C6. So the pharynx, it is a muscular tube يعني أنبوب عضلي. It is wide above and narrow below. It is continuous يعني راح يكون مستمر ويا nasal cavity ويا mouth and with the larynx. Can be divided into this pharynx. هذا البلعوم يعني نقدر نقسمه into 3 parts according to the position. يعني first part, which is the nasopharynx. هذا هو part of the pharynx that is continuous with the nose. We call it nasopharynx. The second part called oropharynx. Oropharynx يعني it means related to the oral cavity. يعني it is continuous with the oral cavity, continuous with the mouth. It is called oropharynx. And the laryngopharynx that is continuous with the larynx مع الحنجرة. So according to the position of the pharynx can be divided into 3 parts. And the part that is situated behind the nasal cavity is called nasopharynx. Part that is situated behind the oral cavity is called oropharynx. And the part that is related to the larynx is called laryngopharynx. Because it is a muscular tube and its relation to the nose and oral cavity and the larynx and esophagus, it have a continuation يعني اكو يعني اتصالات. الفارنكس continuous with the nose. This is a posterior view. هذا منظر خلفي للبلعوم. هنا راح يكون يعني متصل بالنازل cavity لفتحات الأنف من الخلف with 2 nasal cavity that is called the quenny. Also it is continuous with the mouth through the opening of the mouth, and it is continuous with the larynx through the inlet of the larynx. كذلك الفارنكس راح يكون عندنا continuous with the through the Eustachian tube. قناة أوستاكي راح يكون متصل مع middle ear أو tympanic cavity. كذلك يعني راح يكون continuous from below. It is continuous with the esophagus. راح تكون عندنا there are 7 communication of the pharynx. The 2 posterior nasal opening and the 2 Eustachian tube right and left with the opening with the mouth, with the opening of the larynx اللي هي الأديتاس and with the opening of the esophagus. These are the 7 communication of the pharynx. If we examine the wall of the pharynx, it have a musculomembranous wall. These muscles that form the wall of the pharynx, it have we have two type of muscle. The muscle that run in a circular direction and the muscle that run in a longitudinal direction. Here we are, these muscles, we have the superior, what we call superior, middle and inferior constrictors. Its fiber run in a circular direction يعني تقريبا اتجاه الفايبر راح يكون دائري. هاي نسميها superior والميدل والinferior constrictors. النوع الثاني من العضلات اللي هي عندنا الستايلوفارنجيوس from the styloid process to the pharynx, it's called stylopharyngeus. Another muscle called palatopharyngeus from the palate to the pharynx, and salpingopharyngeus from the Eustachian tube wall to the pharynx. It is called salpingopharyngeus muscle. These three muscles, its fiber will run in a longitudinal direction. So this is the muscular wall of the pharynx. There is an overlap of the pharyngeal constrictor اللي هي superior والmiddle and inferior constrictor. Superior, middle and inferior constrictor, they overlap each other. يعني شنو معناها؟ معناها عندنا middle constrictor يعني upper part of the middle constrictor will overlap the lower part of the superior constrictor. The upper part of the inferior constrictor will cover the lower part of the middle constrictor. So they overlap each other. شوف هنا أنه the beginning of this muscle is from the base of the skull down, and then lower down it will become continuous with the wall of the esophagus. The insertion of pharyngeal constrictor, the superior, middle and inferior constrictor, they are inserted posteriorly in a midline fibrous raphe that is called pharyngeal raphe. This pharyngeal raphe extending from the pharyngeal tubercle at the base of the occipital bone down, inferiorly it will become continuous with the esophagus at the midline. This it will form the insertion of the superior, middle and inferior constrictors. نشوف هنا أنه from the base of the skull to the beginning of the superior constrictor we have what we call the pharyngio-basilar fascia. This pharyngio-basilar fascia extends from the base of the skull down to the upper border of the superior constrictor. يعني معناها أنه superior constrictor upper border is not in direct contact with the base of the skull. There is what we call a fascia, type of fascia that is called pharyngio-basilar fascia. There is an area, a weak area في المنطقة ضعيفة خلينا نسميها. It is called Killian dehiscence. What is Killian dehiscence? Here, this is the area at the lower end of the inferior pharyngeal constrictor. Inferior pharyngeal constrictor. Here, at the lower end, we have this area that's called Killian dehiscence. Is the area on the posterior pharyngeal wall. It lies between the upper propulsive part of the inferior constrictor. يعني كأنه الانفيريور constrictor نقدر نقسمها إلى قسمين. الupper part اللي هو هذا يسموه propulsive part of the inferior constrictor. والlower part هذا هو lower part of inferior constrictor نسميه السفنكتريك بارت اللي هو نفسه المصل اللي هو نسميها cricopharyngeus muscle. Why we call it crico? Because it is attached to the cricoid cartilage. This is it form a complete ring of muscles, so it is called cricopharyngeus muscle, and it form a sphincter, just like a sphincter. So it is called cricopharyngeus muscle. So the area in between the inferior part of the pharyngeal constrictor اللي هو propulsive part and the sphincteric part اللي هو cricopharyngeus, this area is called Killian dehiscence. اللي هي في area قلنا عليها weak area. This is a posterior view to the muscle of the pharynx, and we can see that the constrictor muscle is superior constrictor, middle constrictor, inferior constrictor. Its fiber run in a circular direction, يعني تقريبا دائرة راح نقول. بينما اكو عندنا مجموعة العضلات الثانية اللي هي its fiber run longitudinally، اللي هي مثلا عندنا هذه العضلة اللي هي palatopharyngeus from the palate, from the soft palate down to the pharynx, called palatopharyngeus. Another muscle called stylopharyngeus. Stylo from the styloid process to the pharynx, it's called stylopharyngeus. Another muscle called salpingopharyngeus from the auditory tube down to the pharynx. It's called salpingopharyngeus. Its fiber run longitudinally بشكل مستطيل. هذا فد table للmuscle of the pharynx. مثل كل العضلات اللي نحتاج أنه نعرف أنه الأوريجين والإنسيرشن والأكشن والنيرف سبلاي. مثلا عندي هاي السوبيريور كونستريكتور، الميدل كونستريكتور والانفيريور كونستريكتور. كل واحدة راح نشوف الأوريجين مالته، الإنسيرشن، الأكشن، والنيرف سبلاي. قاعد نشوف أنه كل العضلات تشترك بالنيرف سبلاي اللي هو الفيجاس نيرف. الفيجاس نيرف through pharyngeal plexus. فيجاس نيرف through pharyngeal plexus. عدا اكو عندنا عضلة واحدة اللي هي الستايلوفارنجيوس supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve اللي هو ninth cranial nerve، العصب التاسع، العصب القحفي التاسع. خلينا ناخذ هسه اول بارت اللي هو سميناه نيزوفارنكس. نيزوفارنكس قلنا قسمنا الفارنكس الى نيزوفارنكس، اوروفارنكس، ولارينجوفارنكس حسب الموقع. يعني هذا الجزء اللي هو lies behind the nasal cavity سميناه nasopharynx. What are the boundaries? Superiorly is the base of the skull. Inferiorly is the soft palate. هذه هي السوفت palate. Anteriorly طبعا موجود عندنا nasal cavity هنا. و posteriorly هو عندنا first cervical vertebra. Posteriorly is the first cervical vertebra.